We have all heard it takes a village to raise a child. It takes an educated population that reflects the world to make a global city. Our next speaker works for Canada to attract some of the best minds on the planet to our Canadian universities. Please welcome Arvind Gupta.
Thank you so much. And let me start by thanking the organizers for putting on an absolutely wonderful meeting and for inviting me to speak today. I've had a chance to hear many interesting people talk about what it is that defines our cities and what a modern society will look like. And as I listened, I thought about how in the 18th century, society was defined by our ability to exploit resources. The 19th century, by our ability to exploit mass industrialization. In the 20th century, our ability to exploit technology. I believe that the 21st century will be defined by our ability to exploit knowledge. And cities that are able to facilitate knowledge exploitation will be the ones that thrive. Why do I say that? Well, knowledge-based economies are service-based, and service industries are geographically independent. It doesn't matter where they happen. They will go where they find the raw talent they need. So exploiting knowledge is all going to be about our ability to attract, train, and retain talented people from diverse backgrounds. Whoever is able to take knowledge and make our lives better will succeed. And so we have to make sure we have the people who have the ideas, and we have to make sure we give them the resources to execute those ideas. Cities that have done a good job of attracting talented individuals have thrived. We've already seen this. Since 1970, cities that have had more than 10% of their population with college and university degrees have grown twice as fast as those that have had under 10%. Every 10% increase in bachelor degrees in a city translates into an average household growth of 6% in income and a city GDP growth of 22%. Those are phenomenal numbers. And we're seeing even higher numbers as cities focus on attracting people with master's and PhD degrees. What we have to recognize is that talent is mobile, and we do see it moving quickly. We're seeing a free trade in minds and skills developing organically, and we're seeing competition, international competition for talent, and it's fierce. Now, what are the kinds of things we're doing about this? Well, we're seeing governments focus on things like industrial policies, and time and again, we've seen governments try to retain core industries. We've seen them subsidize industries that wouldn't survive without government funds. Often, governments end up subsidizing dying industries. We've seen governments go out to attract new companies, often by trying to figure out which are the industries that are going to be there in the future. We've seen an acceleration of lowest possible taxes, so that governments think that by lowering tax rates, lowering tax rates, they may attract more industry. Unfortunately, this lowering of taxes often ends up hurting the infrastructure that will bring talented individuals into cities. And it works against the very resource that's going to make these industries thrive. So instead, I'd like us to think about what creates talent hubs. Now, you've heard it said earlier that all great innovative cities have great universities. I like what John Sexton said, that all great cities also attract great universities. And if I think of Silicon Valley, Massachusetts Mile, the hub around Toronto, what do we see? They're all concentrations of enormously talented, highly trained potential employees for knowledge-based industries. In these areas, companies get launched, they relocate here, and they become world leaders because there are talented, ambitious, and skilled people available. In fact, if you look at every one of the 20 regions worldwide that's the most knowledge intensive, they're home to a noted large research university. And if you look at Canada's most innovative cities, they're home to one of the U15 research universities. But I don't think we can be complacent about the role of our post-secondary system. Universities and colleges for many years were about a one-way flow where we created skilled individuals and knowledgeable people and pushed them out to societies so that they could become employees. In some sense, we created a very insular world where especially our research universities were the high churches of knowledge, and they developed their own language. And I'm a mathematician, and believe me, I could speak in riddles worse than Latin, which only about 4 or 5 people in the rest of the world could understand. Instead, I think we should think about universities being networked with their local society and how we do it and why we do it. And I'll tell you why I think it's important. I think our students are most inspired when they see that what they learn has an impact on the society around them. They're inspired when they can go away from the classroom and see directly that what we've taught them has relevance to the world. Now, we've done a good job of that in Canada by creating things like co-op programs and getting students out and working. But I like to think about that also with research. How do we take research and transcend it out to society? We've all seen great companies coming out of universities. We've seen Google, all based on university research. But let's also think about how research can be inspired by the society around us. I think that if we as scientists go out into society, we will see wonderful challenges and ideas, and we'll bring them back into the universities and colleges and work on them. But this is not easy to do. And we need to think about the infrastructure we need to do it. So in Toronto, we have Mars. In Vancouver, we have the Great Northern Way campus. In Montreal, we have the Quartier de l'Innovation. They're all examples of smart infrastructure development. They create a meeting ground for researchers in the wider community to support innovation and entrepreneurship. They create synergies that help attract and retain talent. But they also are smart ways of deploying talent outside. Now, Tom Core in the last panel talked about some of the things OCE is doing in fostering these kinds of relationships. I want to give you some ideas about what Mitacs is doing. We have a program called Accelerate, and the program is premised on graduate students being inspired by society for their research. So let me give you an example. One of our employees at Mitacs, we have a saying at Mitacs that there's innovation all around you. One of our administrative assistants was getting her roof changed on her house. And so the guy came with a shovel to take the old roof off, and she said to him, "What is the biggest challenge you have?" And he started talking about, it's hard to get workers to show up on time. And he said, "Okay, but think about in the roofing business, what is the biggest challenge you have?" He said, "The biggest problem we have these days is everyone wants customized roofs. In the old days, all roofs were single and double peak. It was really easy to know how much it would cost to change a roof. Nowadays, everyone has these customized roofs. It's really hard. And when I have to go do an estimate, I might be under or over by 20%. And that means either I lose the business or I lose money on the job." So she came into work and she said, "I've got this roofing guy who doesn't know how to estimate the cost of doing a roofing job. Is that a research challenge?" So, we said, "I don't know, maybe." So we went and talked to some professors, we talked to some students. We talked to a student who was doing his PhD in geometry. And I said to him, "Could you figure this problem out?" He said, "Oh, that's trivial, I can just do that." He went to visit this guy, he went and stood on roofs. And he said, "Well, if I take pictures of this roof, I can solve this." So he took pictures. And he realized that he couldn't tell what the roof looked like from the pictures because there's shadows, different times of the day. A shadow can make a peak look like a valley on a roof. So he got really into this. And he started going with this roofer all over, taking pictures of roofs and figuring out how you could convert that into a three-dimensional computer representation of the roof. It turned out to be a really hard problem. There's a new company that's spun out from this called Automated Systems Research that now sells roofing estimation software to roofing companies around the world. And this student went on to do his thesis on how to take low-dimensional projections of high-dimensional geometries and reconstruct the original geometry. And he's consulted for big companies around the world with his techniques. I was talking to him recently, just finished a job with Intel, where they're designing computer chips, but when you think of computer chips, they come in many different dimensions. And he figured out how the engineers could visualize these chips, all based on someone asking a roofer what the biggest challenge they have is. And that's what innovation is. So we have to, if we want to build innovative societies, we have to ask questions we don't normally ask. We have to ask, we have a company called Bardell Systems in Vancouver, and we've sent lots of computer science and engineers to work with them, and they love it. But they've got 120 people who are all computer scientists and engineers. They don't really need us. They use us because it's a good way to find students and to find new employees. But one of our students said to them, aren't you guys worried about things like Guitar Hero? So I don't really know what Guitar Hero is. My kids play it, but it just sounds like lots of noise to me. So aren't you worried about games like Guitar Hero? And Bardell Games said, yeah, you know, these kind of cooperative games have come out of nowhere. So Bardell Games got convinced to bring 12 sociology and psychology students on site. And they put a whole bunch of 10 to 12-year-olds in a room, and they had them come in every day after school, and they paid them to play computer games. And these psychology and sociology students wrote their thesis on what are cooperative games. And what they learned was that games where, you know, these kids are shooting each other all the time, they're cooperative games. They're no different than Guitar Hero. And that's an innovation, because Bardell Games is going on, and they're restructuring themselves to develop competitive cooperative games. And that's because some kid asked them a question that they're not used to being asked. So as we think about how we create innovative cities, innovative economy, innovations, we should think about how we ask questions that don't normally get asked. How do you connect people that don't normally get connected? Cities think a lot about transportation. In Toronto, every time I come here, everyone's talking about the TTC. My daughter lives here, and you know, she fills my ears with the TTC. The woes of the TTC and all the city council talking about the TTC. And I think, does the City of Toronto talk about how we create channels for exchanging ideas and knowledge? How do we connect people up? How do we make sure the roofer or the games guy is talking to a mathematician or a sociologist? Because I think cities that do that well will be places that the world beats a path to. Thank you very much.